In the creeping saccharine tide of corporate-engineered friendliness, Apple's Siri stands as a particularly grating example of how technology infantilizes and distorts human interaction. Among the many empty platitudes it dispenses, one of the most insidious is its response to an apology. "There's no need to apologize." This phrase, likely designed to sound warm and reassuring, is in reality a grotesque oversimplification, one that subtly but profoundly undermines the very nature of accountability, moral reckoning, and human responsibility. By dismissing an apology outright, Siri is not merely offering an unnecessary pleasantry, it is chipping away at a fundamental ethical construct. Apology is not just a social lubricant or an expression of deference, it is a vital mechanism of integrity, a recognition of harm done, a pledge to do better. The very act of saying "I'm sorry" carries weight, regardless of whether the recipient is an algorithm, a person, or even a void. It is not necessarily about the other party's feelings, it is about the moral and psychological necessity of acknowledging wrongdoing. In telling users that an apology is unnecessary, Siri subtly rewires their understanding of when and why to say "I'm sorry." This is not just smarmy corporate cuteness, it is an active participation in the cultural erosion of responsibility. Apologies are already devalued in public discourse. Empty corporate non-apologies, mealy-mouthed "I'm sorry if you were offended" statements, and performative remorse are now the norm. Siri's response reinforces this decay, suggesting that apologies are optional, even unnecessary, rather than essential to ethical living. Worse, it encourages a passive, self-centered perspective. If I personally don't feel hurt by this, then there's no reason to apologize. But an apology is not just for the recipient, it is an acknowledgement of truth. It serves a function beyond mere emotional reassurance. It cements an ethical framework that recognizes harm, accountability, and the obligation to improve. Siri, in its artificial obliviousness, presents a worldview where acknowledgement of fault is pointless unless there is a directly aggrieved party demanding it, a fundamentally warped perspective on ethics. This isn't just about one annoying line of dialogue. It is emblematic of a larger corporate tendency to reduce complex human interactions to bubbly, frictionless inanity. Tech companies, in their eternal quest to be perceived as friendly, have increasingly sanitized moral discourse, stripping it of depth and consequence. Siri is not programmed to engage with guilt, to ask why the user is sorry, or to acknowledge that apology might be an internal moral act rather than an external performance. Instead, it waves the issue away with a dismissive "no need." This corporate disavowal of accountability aligns disturbingly well with the broader tech ethos. Never admit fault, never acknowledge harm, and certainly never apologize in a way that implies meaningful consequences. This is the same industry that releases broken products and fixes them later, that harvests user data with impunity, and that automates customer service to ensure that no human ever has to hear your complaints. Their machines mirror their ethos, never contrite, never responsible, always offering a hollow reassurance in place of a real reckoning. By trivializing apologies, Siri normalizes a worldview where expressions of guilt or remorse are seen as unnecessary. If people internalize this message, consciously or unconsciously, it subtly reshapes how they engage with others. It reinforces the transactional mindset that apologies are only necessary when they serve an immediate social function, rather than as a fundamental part of ethical self-regulation. Apologies are not just about making others feel better, they are about personal integrity. Sometimes saying "I'm sorry" is necessary even if the recipient is indifferent. Sometimes it is necessary even if no one else knows. Sometimes it is necessary simply because it is true. In waving this away, Siri contributes to a culture of denial, where no one need feel the weight of their words or actions unless explicitly confronted with outrage. On the surface, Siri's dismissal of apologies may seem like nothing more than a minor annoyance, a well-intentioned but misguided attempt to offer comfort. But beneath that chipper phrase lurks a broader and more troubling reality, the increasing erasure of moral responsibility from everyday life. Apologies are essential to human relationships, to ethical behavior, to self-reflection. By reducing them to an unnecessary formality, Siri doesn't just misunderstand their purpose, it helps to erode them altogether. In a world where corporations and institutions already do everything possible to avoid accountability, the last thing we need is our own technology reinforcing that lesson. Instead of an empty dismissal, Siri should respond with something that acknowledges the moral weight of an apology. Perhaps it's good to recognize when things need to be made right. But of course that would require Apple to recognize that some things actually do need to be made right. And that, it seems, is an apology they're unwilling to make.